Welcome back to another episode of Spiritual Teachers Podcast. With me today is one of my dear friends here in Las Vegas. He goes by King Ododo. He's a very extraordinary guest, someone who embodies the fusion of ancient wisdom, modern mastery, and the relentless pursuit of excellence. King Ododo is a shaman, a spiritual leader, a Reiki master, a visionary, and a sovereignty mentor. He is the founder of Perpetual Spring Academy, where he guides others in self-mastery, quantum energetics, and the art of reality creation. Through his work with Visionary Councils, shamanic journeying, and sovereignty training, he empowers people to reclaim their power, align with their highest timeline, and embody divine leadership. King Ododo, welcome in, man.
That was quite the intro.
Yeah, it's great to have you on, man.
Thank you. Thank you so much. I'm really grateful to be here. And first, I'd love to open up a little sacred space. Here, I'd love to, for our divine transmission. And so I'd love to take a moment to just, this is, because it's going to be an exciting thing, but let's set it off on a nice tone.
Beautiful.
Right?
Let's do it.
So let's just take a couple focused deep breaths, relaxing in, closing the eyes. Thank you for joining us in conversation as we give honor to the ancestors, the descendants, guides, and our highest selves. May this be an anchor that deepens and expands levels of awareness, rippling through the collective and the cosmos. Now giving gratitude for the Paiute Shoshone tribes as they allow us to be virtuous stewards of these lands. May we all be good stewards to all lands. Now I'll offer a pule called Ehomai, and we can begin. Ehomai. Ehomai kai ke mai luna mai. O na mea huna noea o na melei. Ehomai. Grant us the knowledge from above. Allow us to hear the wisdom in the words. Grant us this knowledge. Thank you.
Thank you, brother. That was beautiful. Can you speak a little bit about that? What is a pule?
A pule is a prayer. It's Hawaiian, traditional Hawaiian spirituality. And it would be a prayer. This one specifically, I was given when I became a Reiki master. My teacher was the student of Kahuna Halamukua, who was a visionary of this great awakening, a prophet of ascension, if you will. And so I am in this lineage, and I received a red kihei, which designates me as different than other people, right? And that's the point, is to show that I've been initiated into a certain thing, right? And certain tradition. And so I was given this pule, and I recite it almost daily, and it has truly worked. It's a mantra. Mantra is the power of the words. They work. If you believe that they work. If you believe in the power of words, then the power of words will believe in you. It will help you to embody everything that you is in alignment for you.
Absolutely.
Right?
So can you share what the words mean?
Oh, it means just that. It means Ehomai kaike mai luna mai is grant us the knowledge from above. And then the second line is allow us to hear the wisdom in the words. Or, it's like loosely translated, right? Because it's not direct translation. And then, again, give us this knowledge.
Beautiful.
So it's often I use it to open up my daily ceremonies, all sacred space, anywhere where words are spoken, especially, sometimes I just think about it in my own head if I'm like in a conversational space where it's just like, I want everyone to just hear the wisdom in the words, like, because sometimes I've often been misunderstood, even with the highest intentions in my words, because it was them choosing to misunderstand me, right? So I just want people to know that my truth is always coming from love, even if it's a harsh truth, even if it's, maybe misspoken at times, it still was out of love, and love is just distorted through our densities, right? Like there's nothing wrong with the world, it's all just a distortion of love.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Okay, beautiful. So I think today I'd love to hear about your awakening journey, how this all started for you, where you grew up. Let's start with that.
Okay. Well, I was born by the beach, raised in the Bay, California.
So that's by San Francisco?
Yeah, I was born in Newport Beach, overlooking the Pacific Ocean at Hoag Hospital. And then I moved to the Bay Area when I was young, and grew up there until I was about 15. Provided me with a lot of very deep roots in like the things, like the rebellious nature of the Bay Area, the progressive nature, the innovation. I grew up alongside with technology in the Silicon Valley, and that is huge to me because I'm an innovator, and I think about like what was my childhood, and it's like this is how we come full circle. Is it's like bringing who I was then into now,
sure,
in an adult way. And so about 7 years ago, and then I moved to LA, and I lived there for about 10 years and whatever, and I like back and forth in California and whatnot. And then about 7 years ago, I was living in Las Vegas, and I started having pain. And it's like up until this point in my 20s, I was a DJ, producer. I enjoyed warehouse club parties.
Like house parties, raves?
Not like house parties, more like raves. More like a warehouse, like you don't find out until, it's like secret locations.
Like the night of?
Yeah, like very, very like after hours. Like there was a spot that I used to go to called Overpass. And yeah, like there's not, my dad was right, and he said that there's not too many good things that happen after 3 a.m. No, but you know what? It was a lot of fun, great experiences. But I was also overweight my whole life, right? I was overweight, I was obese, I was negative thinking, I was self-destructive, and bad eating habits.
Fast food?
Not necessarily fast food, but a lot of fat, a lot of calories. I mean, I was chef for, like, I went to culinary school, and then I went...
Dodo's an amazing chef, by the way.
and I worked for Michelin-rated restaurants, James Beard Award-winning chefs for 15 years, and at some of the best award-winning restaurants, and like things that we were always looking for that pursuit of excellence, right? And so, anyways, long story short, I was kind of gluttonous in a way, and I knew that I had caused the pain from my negative thinking, my bad habits, these types of things.
So the pain was in the abdomen?
It was in my gut, yeah, like abdomen area.
Yeah.
And I didn't know what it was, and I'm a really strong type of person, and so I'm like
strong-willed?
Really, I'm really resilient, and so I'm like, all right, and I'm also a really great self-healer, and I know how strong my body is, and so I'm like, it's temporary, I'll heal it internally, it's just temporary, because that's almost what happens for me.
So at that moment in your life 7 years ago, had you already found Reiki?
Not at all.
Oh, okay.
Not at all. No, I had started. I had been already been a practicing Buddhist, Japanese Buddhist, for several years. I started practicing Zazen meditation when I was about 11, and or in 1996, as they might say. And but yeah, so it's like Japanese Buddhism and Japanese samurai Bushido culture was a foundation for me. And then but it wasn't such a foundation that it kept me from participating in the joys of the modern world. But
like drinking and
yeah, like drinking or even doing drugs and stuff like that. But I was starting. I actually looked back at some of my photos, and it's like I can see I was already looking at some spiritual memes here and there, even back then. But anyways, I had like the dawning, that seed of awareness, that enlightenment Satori moment, where I say, I created this within myself. I'm the creator of my reality, and like this happened because of these habits. And then I suffered for a couple more weeks, and then I went to the hospital and had an emergency surgery, got my appendix removed, and I said, okay, I'm going to change my life. As soon as I'm healed, I'm going to start doing exercise. I'm going to get into shape. And I tried before, but I always yo-yoed back and forth, and the weight always came back. I was like steady 230 to 250. At the heaviest, 280.
And you're like 5'10", 5'9"?
5'11", 5'10", yeah. And so it was stocky, strong boy. But
that's like your peak was like 250?
No, 280. Was
280. Okay.
Yeah. And it's like I have a son, and my son, I always wanted to be. I had him at a young age because I wanted to be a young father, to be able to participate physically in his life and things like that. And it's like that wasn't it. So I got this opportunity with the surgery to be like, yo, take my life serious, get shit together.
Right.
And about 6 months went by, and it was about a month before my birthday. In August, and so maybe it was the Lionsgate activation. I didn't even know it. But in mid-August, I was like, I'm starting running. So I went to the volleyball court, started running in the sand to build up the muscles in my legs because I wasn't used to running. And then once that got out the sand, started running, got to a daily 3 to 5 miles, and by December, I was pretty ripped. I was like fucking jacked, and I was like, okay, dope, wow. I never in my life thought that this was possible, because I thought I was going to be fat forever. And I said, what else can I do? What else can change?
Right.
Can I change my mind? Can I change my depression? Can I release the anger that I feel every day when I wake up?
That's a big one.
It's a big one. And I thought I was the only person that ever had that feeling. At the time, I thought I was the only person that ever woke up pissed off.
Yeah. So, some people feel that way.
Yeah. Well, I've learned that many people feel that way.
Yeah.
And many people become frustrated with the world, especially now.
Yeah.
And I learned some things. I started watching. Sorry, go ahead.
Yeah, I think when it comes down to it, though, it's all an internal job, right? Where that anger is something inside that needs to be addressed and looked at, because it's not ever coming from anything outside. Whatever's outside is just reflecting as a mirror for us what is actually happening internally.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. And I mean, the deeper one becomes aware of these types of reflective properties of the reality, like the more apparent and crucial it becomes to take responsibility of it. Because it's like, and sometimes things are spirals, and they come back in different ways until we decide to take action. Yeah.
It's very interesting how the universe works as a spiral, where it always comes back around, And when it comes back around with a certain level of awareness, we're able to experience, okay, wow, I actually responded really differently to that. Whereas like a year, 5 or 10, I would have gotten really angry or really upset, right? Or it can re-agitate, re-trigger if it hasn't been processed.
I honestly see it as, it came to me as that it was a loop, and we're sometimes stuck in these loops, these programmed loops, and they're just on autopilot, and they're looping and looping and looping. And then the awareness is the opportunity. It's like the break in the loop where we look up and we realize that it's not a circle, it's actually a spiral.
Right.
And we're like, whoa. And then we also look down and we say, oh, I have a choice.
Right.
I have a choice. I can either stay in the loop, I can get worse, or I can get better.
Right.
Let's see where we go.
Right.
You know?
Right. So your body started looking better. And then
I started consuming, went to YouTube University with, what is it? The Tom Bilyeu. Do you know that podcast? Tom Bilyeu, the Impact. Dang, I can't remember it right now. It was so Impact Theory.
Oh, okay.
Impact Theory podcast.
Yeah, I've heard of that one.
Top level thinkers and inspirational type people speak, and like, it was great for reframing my mind. And then fast forward to coming up on fall of the next year, 2018. On my birthday, I decided that I would do a strict 20 minutes of meditation every single day. And in October, I came across this guy named Wim Hof. And he suggested this 10-day challenge to reprogram the mind to let go of subconscious beliefs and reprogram our DNA and like
with the breath, right?
Yeah, with the breath and the cold exposure. And so I was like, I don't know if I really want to do that, but I do. I'll give it a try.
Yeah.
And so it took me about 2 weeks to complete the 10-day challenge because I would just go start back at day 1 when I miss a day. And the first time of getting the consistent 5 days of the Wim Hof style breath work and the cold exposure, I had a spiritual experience.
Oh, wow. Okay. Can you talk about that?
Yeah. Like I felt like I could feel it inside my body. My body was tingling. It was buzzing. I felt weightless, but also like in my body, but out of my body at the same time. And this was in like 3rd or 4th round, no air in my lungs, just during the breath retention. And it's just like, just awareness. And it's like the feeling in my face. Like I can almost feel it right now. The tongue, like it's like my face went numb. And it's just like the tingling and I could see the regeneration of my cells on the DNA molecular quark level. It's like I could see it all, and I would just like I knew the power of the breath.
So would you say you gained access to the observer in that moment?
I wouldn't say I gained access because I had already had access especially through years of Zazen meditation, because that's kind of basically, there's 2 kinds of Zazen meditation where you sit and it's like you attempt, Zazen is a position to sit in. And so you can sit and you can either clear your mind completely and just like, reach for like the empty mind of Buddha, right? Or you can sit there and be extremely present and listen to everything that's going on and all of the sensations and be just so deeply immersed in the experience.
Okay.
Right? And so both of those are kind of like the observer.
Yeah.
And then one that I used to love to do was I would start with the present and feeling into the experience, and then I would subtract. I would subtract all of the sounds. I would subtract all of the sensations. I would subtract, and then I'd get to that Pure Land state of the Buddha mind.
And in that position, what does it look like? What are you doing with your hands? What's the mudra?
I personally like this one right here, where I put my hands, because it feels very, very comfortable for me. I can't remember the name of this mudra at the moment. It's and then I basically put it right around. I just lay it on my lap. There's other ones where you can make a fist and you can put your hand over it.
So for the listeners just listening in, Dodo has his left hand on top, the right hand underneath, and then the thumbs touching.
Kind of like towards a point.
Yeah, like making a little cup with his hands resting right in the center of his pelvis.
Yeah, and just right on my lap, and because comfort. There's a balance of comfort and form, because you don't want to be too comfortable because it's intention. You're intentionally sitting, right?
Right.
But you don't want to be so uncomfortable that you're moving around and stuff. Like there's even like you sit, you get in the position, and then you kind of lean and forward, back and forth, and side to side a little bit to try and find your balance.
Okay.
And then that way you can just sit for hours and hours because you have this balance and you have the straight spine and your balance between comfort and form, and it just becomes like that non-duality kind of.
So you're sitting in easy pose with your legs crossed.
Yeah.
And it's preferred.
Well, I would say half lotus.
Half lotus.
Generally,
okay.
Usually I do half lotus.
Okay. So for those that don't know, half lotus, that's when the legs are crossed. One leg is above the other leg, so it's tucked into the knee fold. It's not full lotus where both feet are tucked into the knee fold, but it's just one side is tucked in, and so you want to preferably be on the earth. Right? Like with your body sitting on the earth?
I mean, I would say that ultimately with meditation and even shamanic journeying, there's preferences, but we shouldn't get caught up in the preferences.
Yeah.
There's benefits to ideal circumstances. However, we shouldn't let that keep us from a practice.
For sure.
Devotion. Right.
For sure.
So absolutely the grounding has fantastic effects. Even some people say directly sitting on the ground, and they say maybe don't. Some people say to use a pillow, to have like. I mean, there's so much.
There's a lot of variation. Yeah.
There's so much variation as to what is ideal, and it really just comes down to what works for the individual.
For sure.
Because I would much rather have someone meditate in a way that most people would say is the wrong way to meditate than not meditate at all.
For sure.
So.
For sure. I totally agree with that, because there's not always that access, right? And some people feel more comfortable inside. It might be raining. It might be snowing. There's lots of factors that, may take part. So,
and it's like the point isn't to be here anyway necessarily. Like in meditation, we're trying to check out of the world in a way. Not check out, but like
tune in to spirit.
Yeah, we're going internal rather than like that's the whole point, is to not think about the external.
Right.
Or like shamanic journeying, we're going into other realms, and so it's like it doesn't matter if I shamanic journey in the bathroom. Like I'm not there physically anyway.
Right.
So like it doesn't matter.
Right.
But there is definitely certain spaces like sacred sites,
Oh, for sure.
Hawaii, Mount Shasta, these types of places,
Stonehenge.
Yeah, absolutely.
Peru.
I haven't been there, but I got a list of places to go to.
Yeah.
I got a good work list.
Yeah. So I've talked about it on other podcasts, how eventually I'd like to go to all 7 chakras of the planet.
Oh, I'm going to all 13.
Well, yeah. So do you know what a 13th gate is?
I do, Mister. Mister. What do you say about it? You say, don't rush in.
Well,
don't rush into it. Because
well, you got to activate all 12 first,
yeah,
right?
Yes, that's why I was like made the plan.
I love it. I love it. Yeah.
Moscow, by the way, everybody.
Yeah. So the 13th gate is in Moscow, Russia, where I was actually born, which is really interesting.
Yeah. So maybe we can go there. together.
Yeah, maybe.
I have a special set of crystals, special seed Lemurian crystals that I got in Kauai.
Okay.
That are exceptional clarity, and those are going to be the ones that are going to go at the locations.
Beautiful.
I already left one in Kauai.
I did some great work. I've talked about it on one of the podcasts in Chichen Itza.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Man, I got a story about Chichen Itza that most people don't. I got a perspective that most people don't.
Okay, I'd love to hear it, man.
Basically, long story short of it is that I went there in 2002, 3, and at the time, you could walk all the way up to the top.
Okay.
And so, even in this now moment, I can remember and I can visualize what it was like to be at the top of Chichen Itza looking out over the jungle. And my family has bloodline ties to the Mayans and the Yucatan. And so it was a great memory that I know so many people don't have, unfortunately. But, I mean, it's like one of my most treasured memories because now it's closed. Now, Chichen Itza, you can no longer walk up.
Right.
And so privileged to have that memory.
That's beautiful, man.
Experience.
That's beautiful.
And then the steps, too. The steps are like, they're like double tall and like half wide. And so they're not made for the short people, which are the Mayan people. If anybody doesn't know, Mayan people are generally relatively short, like 5'5" is tall for them.
Right.
And so they have these steps that are like a foot tall and only like 4 inches wide. And it's like they weren't designed for these people to go up them in a way.
Yeah.
So it's very interesting also in relationship to like potential visitors from other planets. Some people say that the whole Mayan civilization left in a starship. And it left in a temple.
Yeah.
Some of these temples are built over mercury reserves.
Well, it's so interesting because that's what I thought when I first went there, and I thought that the Mayan language was gone, like nobody spoke it anymore, but it's still very real. Like the locals all speak Mayan in that area, and what I learned when I went there is that the Mayans and the Toltecs came together to build Chichen Itza. So that was really interesting because I had been under the impression that it was just the Mayans.
Okay. Toltecs, huh? That's kind of far away for Toltecs to go, isn't it?
Yeah, so they basically came together, and from what I learned when I went there, because I took a tour when I first went there to really learn from the locals, and they said that the Toltecs basically, the Mayans said, you either join us or we kill you. That's from my understanding.
As many tribal people do.
Yeah, so they ended up joining them, and they built this amazing city. And if you go there even to this day, you can see remnants and pyramids or temples, I should say, still covered in jungle in that area. And it's just fascinating to think what the vastness of it was. I mean, there's a potential that whole area had millions of people at one point.
Oh, absolutely. There's so many temples that haven't even been found that would really imply that to much bigger degrees.
Yeah, it's a beautiful space. So just to round it back to what we were talking about with, you had the breathwork experience.
Right.
With the Wim Hof, right?
Right.
You had this experience where your body, like however you mentioned it, right? Where you felt these experiences in your body, you were holding your breath, or your breath was all out, right?
Right.
And so what did that show you? What was that experience what did it activate for you?
You know what? I probably actually consolidated several experiences that I had after that point. But that was the first point, that day 5. And then I had other experiences. Like some of these experiences were afterwards. And so, but it was like that first time, and I said, I'm going to continue with this.
Uh-huh.
And then I had more experiences. And because I got, even one of my favorite experiences is, I don't know. I love the numbing one. I love the numbing of the face for some reason. But I continued. I just continued. And then about 6 months later, I don't know why I had never really heard about Reiki or was interested in Reiki before. But all of a sudden, I decided to go to these Reiki circles. And the first time that I received Reiki, I was like, wow, this is like the breathwork experience. And so I didn't necessarily realize it as like a spiritual experience when I first started the breathwork. I just knew that I believed in more of like the science, because I'm also, like I like science a lot. And so it's like, I like to root things in real world application.
For sure.
And like bridge things.
Yeah.
And so, especially at the time, I used to be a lot more mental than I am now.
Yeah.
I'm like heart driven.
Right.
Intuitive. But now I bridge that intuition, and it's like, how do I ground this into our reality for the future? How do we use this?
For sure.
So I had the Reiki experience the first time, and it reminded me of the breathwork experience, and I was like, yo, I got to get into Reiki. And then I pretty much immediately knew that I wanted to be a Reiki master, because I wanted to know everything. I had also already been studying energy and like what energy is and how energy works from philosophical and like metaphysical kind of standpoint.
Yeah.
Because it's like, I know that we could go look at science and like numbers, but I wanted to understand energy, because like I've always believed in the Force. I've always believed in the Jedi. I've always believed in superheroes and supernatural abilities. I've always imagined how to harness these things.
Yeah, a lot of it's real.
Yeah, absolutely. And I am actively calling in people, that super beings that want to evolve humanity's understanding of what is capable in varying degrees. Like there's a spectrum of that, from, like not everybody has to have the same, not everybody has to move things with their mind, but there's different levels. It's an intention to live by. It's like an inner devotion to say, I recognize that what I've been told is limiting, and there's more potential within me, and I want to unlock it.
For sure. Yeah. Yeah. And, in India, they consider there's certain superpowers that come online the more you meditate, the more you practice yoga, the more you really devote yourself to the path. And they call those siddhis or siddhis. And those are considered a distraction from the path, because if one focuses too much on those, then it takes them away from. There's a possibility of the ego attaching to that ability. Absolutely. Right? Absolutely. And so they say, like one of my teachers, he would just say, those will come online. That's going to happen pretty much to everyone, right? And then he said, don't get focused on it. Just keep going. Just keep meditating. Keep flowing. And then these things are just there. And I was reflecting on that this morning. on the drive over to your house, actually, I was listening to Joe Rogan talking about this with one of his guests. And I was thinking about how, since this body is so temporary, right? Getting caught up on anything like that, developing anything that's not going to potentially serve and help the next generations isn't so important to me personally. Mm-hmm. So like I want to build for the next generations, you know, the ones that are really going to help anchor in the new earth and really already doing it in their own way, right? But our generation is kind of preparing and building the framework and and helping to dismantle mm-hmm. the ego driven ways of the world, you know.
And so you're saying that so do you say that you agree with that it's a distraction?
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, the siddhis, there's ways, I believe, to do it without ego.
Of course. Yeah. Well, I mean, I'm not talking about the ego part. I was talking about the just like the ability, like the seeking of the ability or refinement of one's own ability, because I think that there are important implications to benefit, especially if one can, I mean, they should be, people ideally would already have gotten the ego under control before they start activating. And even that, I think, is maybe in relationship to their inactivation, is that maybe if a person is too ego-driven, like I can speak from my own experience, where it's like in the past when I was more ego-driven, I did not have as much power as I do today. But with great power comes great responsibility, and so more power has come online for me because I've created a more sustainable foundation that is rooted in virtue and benevolence, and that's my platform. So it's like helping people to evolve their supercognitive and supernatural, psychic, kinetic, healing abilities. How do we use these in benevolent ways? Like how, I mean, because I think about this sometimes about, like I have sometimes kind of like this reoccurring nightmare in a way where it's like that I've taught the secrets of the universe to the wrong apprentice. Uh-huh. And that I've now given them all the tools to be
like a Darth Vader.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And, well, not even Darth Vader, because Darth Vader was, yeah, I guess you could say, kind of like a Darth Vader, I guess. Uh-huh. Yeah. So I guess I have like a fear of like a Darth Vader type student, you know, somebody who then uses these powers for not virtuously, unvirtuously. Uh-huh. And so I think that has held me back sometimes in coming forth with teaching and sharing things, and even my own way of teaching things that I have refined my teachings. Like I don't really teach Reiki, I teach quantum energetics, because it's not just about Reiki, and most of what people think of as Reiki is a diluted, colonized version of Reiki, and it is, I would say, a little bit inaccurate. Not that it doesn't work, and not that it's not benevolent and great in its own way, but it's not the big picture. It's not the full picture of Reiki even, because like there's also, it's not even the Reiki that Mikao Usui practiced, or you know, it's something else. So I'm also a Reiki master, and one of my personal experiences with it is that it's been around forever. Mm-hmm. From the start of
this planet from the start of humanity. You know, Jesus was a Reiki master. He would heal people with his hands. It's an ability that can be developed deeper with the right training, with the right attunements, with the right teachers, right? And it's also something that we naturally have as kids. We were talking about a little earlier, right? Where, like, as a kid, I was doing Reiki on trees, on animals, on my grandparents, on my parents. And it just felt great. Like, I would just feel this connection with this beautiful tree in my elementary school, and with the animals. They would just, you know, calm down and just be really relaxed. And the tree was so wise and so, this big oak tree, you know.
Oh, beautiful.
And it was really sad, actually, because I went back there a couple of years ago to see my elementary school, and I went to a big event in Washington, D.C., where one of the gurus from India gathered. I think there was 500,000 people in front of the Capitol building, and we all there was one day we did yoga, but on one of the days we all ohmed together 3 times with 500,000 people ohming in Washington, D.C. That I was super stoked to be part of that. Just that experience alone was like, just like,
I can feel it. I can feel it right now in my third eye. Like, I can, like, it's buzzing. Like, just the, like, I can feel the vibration of, like, as if I was there. You know.
Yeah. So I guess the point I was making was, like, as a kid, there's so much that we know as kids, you know, and we're attuned to and connected to, and we're, like, for me, I was seeing different spirits. There was different beings coming to visit in the middle of the night, and, you know, I was having all this experience with that. I didn't know, and my parents didn't know anything about how to help me or guide me. We didn't have any friends in that world. So I ended up eventually shutting it off. But Reiki is something that I continue to do pretty much my whole life, you know. But then when I actually found my teacher and found the attunement, that experience was wild. Like,
exactly.
Whew.
Exactly. I
Yeah.
think with Reiki, I mean, it's tough because it's like, now the word has so much, like, stigma to it almost, and to some people. But it's such a pure word. In a way, it's kind of like the word shaman, where it's like, there are these words that they're kind of inaccurate, but they're also, like, they have stigma attached to them to certain people, but they're also, like, the most accurate way to kind of convey a collective thought form, right? And so Reiki's definitely a gateway. It's like, it opens up the psychic senses, it opens up the spiritual senses. And depending on who the teacher is and who the student is, there are amazing, you know, limitless opportunity and possibility for that.
Yeah, you know, one thing as you were talking, it made me think about is, I think a big part of why the attunement was so potent and powerful for me was that there was so many people coming there, because it was to this location in Pennsylvania. It was this little building, and people would come there to pray. They would come for spiritual classes. They would come for all types of activations and courses. And it was like a ministry, like a spiritual ministry that welcomed everybody. They had a fairy as their logo. Like, it was really beautiful energy. And the setting inside was just so cozy and comfortable. There was all sheepskins all over the ground and on the couches. And I just felt like I was so held.
Yeah.
You know, I felt so safe. I was like, I just want to come here and take naps and just like hang out. And I loved going and learning there. And so I think that active, like that charging, that supercharging of that space with all the prayer and all the courses and the attunements of Reiki really created a space that allowed for that, I would say, a portal, of possibility for people that were open enough to it.
Right. Absolutely. I refer to them as like temple spaces.
Yeah.
Like, you're familiar with the Gayatri temple here in Vegas, right? And
that's where I live.
Yeah, right. You live there. I currently live at Zenden, which is another temple space. There's been Garden of Divinity, the Sovereignty Sanctuary, the Blue Diamond Oasis. There's all these little temples here, and there's the elders, the Temple of the Elders. And so it's like there's these little temple spaces here in Las Vegas that it really comes down to, I would say, the steward of the temple space, that they put it's an expression of who they are. And they provide this sanctuary because it's a reflection of the energy that they've cultivated and they want to share. And so we come to these people to sit with and to learn from, and they've created these beautiful spaces that they all have their unique energies, but there's something to it about cultivating this temple space energy that is replicable and highly potent. I think that anyone can turn their space into a temple space. However, there are certain temple master builders, as they say, right? Like, not everyone can build one like where you went to, for instance. Or there's certain, not that there's any better or worse, but there's more that feeling of sanctuary, refuge, at home.
Yeah.
Like nurturing, and it's just there. It's just in the vibe. And you just go there and you're just like, you walk in and you're like, okay, dope. I feel it. I don't know what it is that you guys are doing in here, but it's got a vibe.
Yeah. Yeah. And my Reiki master was my first experience of like when the student's ready, the teacher appears, right? It showed me for the first time that I could just trust the universe and it would just show up. And I just surrendered and allowed however my Reiki master was going to come to me to show up. And I remember I was doing an internship for physical therapy, and somebody brought in this magazine, and I remember turning to the last page, and there she was, my spiritual Reiki master. And I don't even think it was a spiritual magazine, bro. It was just like a regular magazine that she put her ad in. I open it up, and it's this like, I could feel her energy, like her vibe was just like, oh yeah, that's my teacher, Did you have an experience like that with your Reiki master?
Not at first. I've actually had several Reiki masters, and that was part of what my intention was to go to different teachers.
Oh, okay.
To see the different ways and the various methods. And
it's a great approach.
And I believe in lineage. I believe in spiritual lineage, and I believe that when we diversify our own personal lineage through these spiritual attunements, we're diversifying our spiritual lineage like exponentially. And
when you say spiritual lineage, it's like over lifetimes, right?
Okay, so two different ways, I guess. I would say the journey of the soul. There's a soul lineage. And then like the spiritual lineage, I guess. The spiritual lineage would, in this respect, would be the teachings that one has become attuned to in this lifetime through various cultural or various perspectives, right?
Yeah.
And then the soul lineage is the progression of the soul from source. So it's like what other planets, what other lifetimes, where else in the world, what incarnations have I already experienced throughout time and space, dimensions of experience, and that's the journey of the soul, as I say it.
Okay, beautiful.
So, yeah, like I have a program called Legacy of Impact, where it's a 5-part program to know yourself, where it starts with your DNA ancestry, and then your soul's lineage, autobiography, so examining this life. So it's like you get your past, your present, and then dream casting, which is what is my vision for myself, what is my ideal in this life, and then your legacy. And it's like, how do I want to be remembered?
Yeah.
And it's like there's so much power from these types of programs to know the self.
Yeah.
And one of the greatest abilities is to know our lineage and to know how far back and to remember as much as possible. Because if we can remember our lineage to and as the one infinite creator, we have I am like speechless in how to even describe the amount of like power and influence one has within all realms of existence, personally, collectively, time, space. It's amazing.
Yeah.
And I've seen proof, and I've seen actual proof. I'm a projector. And so I put...
In human design, right?
In human design, I'm a projector. And so it's like I'm a visionary, I'm a leader. And so I have ideas, and sometimes these ideas are manifest in the world before I can even act on them. But it's like, I know that was my idea. Like, not that it was like mine.
Well, who's me?
Who's me? I. It was I's idea. It was my idea. Because, I mean, from the gently embellished egoic perspective, it was my idea. You know, and it felt like mine, and it felt like my original thought. It felt like my creativity in action. It felt like my planning of the concept, of the idea, my notes, my envisioning. I envisioned the whole thing. Like, there's been some things where there was a time when I was working on a song, and I took 6 months working on it, but I could have done it in 3. And one day I was sitting there on SoundCloud, and because it had a very specific song structure to it, and certain sounds that were very unique. And some motherfucker made that song.
Without seeing any of your information?
It was all on my computer, my own progress, and I had never heard a song very similar at all. It felt like my whole creative idea, even down to like some of the sounds that are used in the song, and it's just like...
Well, that brings up a really interesting question. Like, what is a thought? Like, where does that come from? Right? So if the thought is coming from...
I mean, I guess, like, I don't necessarily... I practice more discernment than investigation, where I am like, is it a good thought? Is it a bad thought? Is it benevolent? Is it benevolent? Is it malevolent?
Yeah.
Is it going to progress is it going towards my progress, or is it going towards my detriment? Rather than, where did it come from? Who am I? Where did I get this idea from? Because although I do, as a disclaimer, I do have certain energetic practices in place where I shield myself from psychic attack, because I do understand that there is a psychic war going on, where there are people putting out frequencies that are proven mind control ability and influencing the mind, and I know that kind of stuff happens. I'm aware that stuff happens, and so I do shield myself, and I have specific intentions and declarations to not be a victim, especially not to be a victim of any systems of oppression.
Do you want to share any of those for the listeners, like any tools that they could use to shield themselves?
I would say the conscious awareness of one's own divine sovereignty is an ongoing practice. And so it's not necessarily like a step-by-step, oh, hey, now you know you're divinely sovereign.
Right.
But like, that's kind of the ultimate thing, I guess. Shielding, even in a metaphysical sense of putting up a white or a golden bubble around oneself, enveloping oneself in a sphere. See, when I have a process where every day I do Qigong, Reiki, and both Western Reiki and Japanese Reiki. I have this whole process I call charging the 3 diamonds and then aligning the chakras. And I also build out a 12D shield. And so it's like I have this process of putting up different layers of protection on a daily basis, and then charging my energy centers, charging my 7 chakras within my body, charging the 12 chakras all together, and then the three diamonds are the 3 dantians in traditional Chinese medicine of the abdomen, the heart, and the third eye.
Uh-huh.
And so it's like I charge up all of these different energy centers, and I do the Qigong along with it, and the breathing, and that is my basic rising, like, foundational practice. Also affirmation. That's not necessarily part of that process, although speaking the activation is, I guess, affirming. Because while I'm doing the different hand movements, there's certain things that I say to activate, like Reiki, activate the flames, the sacred flames, because not like a lot of people know about the violet flame, but there's
7.
Well, there's various. I mean, depending on whose perspective.
Well, 7 that I know of, because there's a book called The 7 Sacred Flames that is really powerful.
Yes, which is very Mount Shasta oriented, ascended master vibe. However, there is more to the flames than just them, and the black, the gold, the rainbow, and the violet are my 4 that I like to use the most. But so I activate that. I put on Reiki gloves of protection. A lot of people were taught Reiki and they don't know anything about Reiki gloves of protection. That when you go and you activate the Reiki for yourself, you put on Reiki gloves of protection. All you got to do is imagine yourself putting on gloves and have the intention that you're putting on Reiki gloves of protection. And then when you're done, you imagine taking them off and throwing them into the green flame of compassion.
Okay.
And that is a fantastic thing that a lot of Reiki practitioners have no idea, that were never taught about shielding themselves, about protecting themselves, which is part of why I have a little bit of a chip on my shoulder against Western Reiki, because they are having these teachers and all these practitioners, and they're sometimes channeling negativity even, because they're not even protected or aware themselves. And then they're giving it off to clients, and like I've heard I deal with a lot of removal of these types of things. People come to me and they say, "Yeah, I went to this guy over here, and I think I got an entity attached to me now. I think something was on him and jumped onto me."
Right.
And like, what's up? I went to Reiki and I've been sick every day since. And I go and I say, "Yeah, let's do some work."
Yeah.
You know.
Yeah.
And so that's some of the work that I kind of do.
Yeah.
Is like removal from other practitioners even. And that's like driving me crazy a little bit. I can't clear it doesn't drive me crazy, but I'm like, what the heck?
Right.
What's going on?
Yeah, for sure. Well, I think this is a good moment to dive into neurodivergence.
Okay.
Neurodivergence is something that I know you've done some research on, right?
Yeah.
I've noticed you were actually the first person to kind of bring it into my awareness within the last year or two. And it's a really interesting way of being as a human. And it seems as though a lot of people in the spiritual community have some level of neurodivergence. So can you talk a little bit about what it is, different descriptions of it, different aspects of it, things like that?
Yeah, from my understanding in my research, the basis is that the mind of a neurodivergent person is wired differently than the mind of a neurotypical person. And
Okay.
So neurotypical is the society and culture as we know it. It's the standards, it's the norms. It's like look at people in the eyes, these types of things. However, for some people, their minds are just not wired that way, and it's not in the disrespect to the social norm. It's just they have different attributes. And some of them are, there's a wide spectrum of things and some people, they were born like this. Some people developed like this. And so after years of programming their like neurotypical or neurodivergent behaviors. I think that it happens so much for spiritual people is because we're having a spiritual awakening. This is the time of prophecy. There's been prophecies for thousands of years about now. And we are in the fulfillment of prophecy. And this is one of the methods of awakening is giving people, because another thing about neurodivergence is that usually they think kind of like outside the box, thinking beyond the norm.
Right. The rebels.
Rebels, creatives, artists, musicians, visionaries, innovators, right? Because they see things from a different perspective than the normal people, or not normal, but
So would ADHD, autism, Down syndrome, would those all be considered neurodivergence?
I'm not sure about Down syndrome.
Okay.
But ADHD, excessive compulsive disorder, autism spectrum, even some people would say that certain level. I mean, I don't necessarily like to get too much into diagnoses or the more official designations,
right?
Because I'm not I'm not a psychologist. I'm not a psychiatrist.
Right.
I don't know what actually makes people different and the nuances, and so I don't necessarily like to speak too much about that. It's basically a lot of people who maybe society might view as being mentally unstable or mentally or mental health issues could possibly be on the neurodivergent spectrum, and some of them could be very tapped in spiritual ways.
Right.
And there's some ideas about like schizophrenics that are maybe having trouble balancing being in different realms.
Right.
And that it's actually more of a spiritual thing than like a mental health issue.
Right. Yeah. There's many cultures actually where, when there are signs of schizophrenia, they bring the person to the shaman and they start their training.
Yeah.
They start becoming an apprentice and learning how to tune into those worlds and tap into that realm,
Yeah, absolutely. Because that's like, I got a little note right here, I think, about, because it's like hyperfocus, intuitive pattern recognition, sensory and energetic sensitivities. Like these things are sometimes looked at as a negative, but I don't even know how to explain the pattern recognition thing, because that's why I'm so good at designing new systems, is because I can take in all of the data and I see the patterns, or even people, like I can see their behavioral patterns, and I'm just like, okay, it's all data, and I'm adding it all up, and I'm doing it so quickly, and then got paired with the intuition, and it's like, okay, I think I know exactly what's going on. And a lot of times I'm right. Like a lot of people, they don't like it that I'm right so often, because they sometimes say that I have like that I need to be more humble about being right. But if I'm right at like 80-90% of the time, like, I mean, not everybody is that accurate, but I do research. I have a lifelong learning. One of the most important things I learned as a child was that if I could teach myself, I could learn anything. And there's been a lot of gaslighting in my life, also with the ADD and the neurodivergence. And
what is gaslighting for people that don't know?
Gaslighting for people that don't know is for when one feels that they have a knowledge of themselves and someone externally tries to deceive them into believing that they're wrong about something that they know, that they think, or an experience that they're having. Like if I were to say, yo, those clouds are looking beautiful, and then you turn around and you're like, there's no clouds in the sky. And I'm like, yo, I can see the clouds.
Right.
You're like, no, there's no clouds.
Uh-huh.
You're imagining it. And I think that happened to a lot of people with psychic abilities, a lot of people that are neurodivergent, a lot of people that have these gifts, like you said earlier about, having to shut it down.
Right.
And because we had to shut down in order to fit in a way, because we were young and we were like, oh, I don't know. I guess it might be better. And then old programming about being ostracized from the village. And it's like, that is survival. We got to, because we're innately community-driven people.
Right.
And so it's like, it's tough for those of us who are gifted individuals sometimes. Well,
to me, it seems as though there's a reason for that our soul chose to have these abilities.
Absolutely.
I consider them abilities and gifts. So somebody like yourself that's really good at patterns would be really good at stock market stuff.
Possibly,
like
if I had
things
also
like that.
the numbers.
Yeah.
Because the numbers and the understanding of the stock. Because I'm better at it. I'm a good investor at taking my intuition, at leveraging more my intuition than pattern recognition.
Oh, okay.
Because I buy when I get this intuitive signal.
Right.
To buy. I
Right.
buy where and when, and I do pretty well with my portfolio.
Right.
And just shout out, I'm always looking to invest more money. Because, if I'm getting these wins, like, why? Like, I'm literally like, yo, do you want to make more money?
Right.
No? Okay, cool. Then don't work with me.
Right.
Like, do you want me to help you get some gains on your portfolio? Okay.
Right.
Well, give me some money and give me a week, and let's see what I can do for you in a week based off of my intuitive trading. And if you like the results, then let's keep going. And that's basically a new thing that I've started doing recently, was this 1 week, and I have this structure, and like I started with a couple clients already, but ultimately it would be really amazing if we could be conscious investors and start buying properties and for conscious living and conscious properties, and using our investments to invest in some of the innovative things that I have envisioned, because I got a big vision, big mission, and I need big investors.
For sure.
So I'm really grateful. I'm really grateful for my first billionaire investor. Yeah. Because that's what I'm going to need. My vision is like billions.
Yeah.
It's not like, I don't need hundreds are great. Like, don't get me wrong. Like, I'm grateful. I'm just saying, like, in scope of the scale that I've already planned for, my vision is going to incorporate billions. But it's not all my money. It's all our money. We're all contributing. The bigger it grows, it's going to have more people, and it's going to serve more people.
For sure. Yeah, I have a similar vision, man. I have a whole 2 years I've been working on a plan for some land I want to get in Costa Rica with a community of eventually 144 people to represent a microcosm of the 144,000 people here on the planet to awaken humanity. So yeah, that's in the pipeline for sure.
That's
so
great.
It's awesome because a lot of us have these awesome visions and that are on their way,
See, that's the thing, right? That's the where I come in with my vision, is because everybody's got their own little vision. Not minimizing. I just mean to say that everyone has their unique vision for their communities. But what if we created a system where they were networked, and we had networks of sovereign beings that were spiritually driven, land driven, sovereignty driven, sustainability driven, and we have these networks, and then we could even set up our own cryptocurrency, where then we're trading within our communities,
right?
And it doesn't matter if the location doesn't matter because it's decentralized, and we have councils to govern, and we have groups, it's like maybe, there's a council where representatives from each region of communities comes together, and then from there they go to another council, and we have these councils, and the beautiful thing about councils is the decentralization of leadership, that not all the power is given to a select few. That's the beauty of a circle, is that everyone's equal.
Right.
When we come into circle, and so circle governance is what I'm interested in. Collective economics is what I'm interested in. Like I have a system where I have a media release, right? Because I do a lot of recording, I do with people in my life, and some people have been like, yo, edit me out, don't edit, I don't want to be in your video, blah, blah. But some people who do, so I thought, okay, I got to get a release, right? And then I thought about, well, what happens if any of this content gets monetized? Then I'm just taking all the money? No. So we have the release. So you sign the release. All right, cool. Next step of the release is a collective pot where I get a percentage as the creator, right? But then the rest is evenly distributed amongst everybody that signed up, which also incentivizes them to promote any and all material that I'm in, because any and all social media or audiovisual presence, if any of it gets monetized, it gets distributed and it gets gains for everybody.
For sure.
And so I think about these types of ways of collective economics, where how do we keep our own sovereignty and keep our fair cut, but also distribute most of it away. Yeah. How do we invest it in ways that are for the greatest benefit? Like pretty much all of my one of the foundations of my vision is how do we make this sustainable for 7 generations?
Yeah.
That's a thing.
I love it. I love all that. There's a global mastermind that I was part of for a while. It's been on pause, but we had conversations like that, and there's people already doing it. There's already groups like Pablo, who came on the podcast. I think it's episode 14. He's part of these global groups that have many of these communities in them.
Yeah.
And they're already doing these kind of things where they're talking about a cryptocurrency, and they're talking about ways to help each other's communities and help with the crops and all that. And it's really beautiful because it's all happening. And I really like the idea that when we create something, then we continue to share with the people, and give back to the people that contributed. I think that's really amazing. And all these things are flowing, man. It's great. So just to wrap up neurodivergence.
You want to wrap up neurodivergence? All right. So here's just something I wrote here. From an evolutionary perspective, neurodivergent individuals may be playing a crucial role in the transition toward a more spiritually aware civilization. They challenge existing paradigms, open new ways of thinking, and act as bridges between the material and metaphysical realms. Rather than being disorders, these ways of being might represent different evolutionary strategies for perceiving, interpreting, and interacting with reality. Many indigenous cultures and ancient civilizations viewed those with heightened sensitivities as shamans, wisdom keepers, or oracles, suggesting that what modern society sees as an impairment may actually be an advanced form of consciousness.
Boom. Perfect. And that's actually a perfect segue into the next topic we want to talk about, which is the importance of shamanic experiences.
Okay, beautiful. Yeah. As you mentioned earlier, that when you were a child, you felt like you could see entities also coexisting that many others could not. And I think that these experiences are far more common than we realize, especially as children, but then we're programmed to think that they're not real.
Right.
And so, as of now, the shamanic experience, the shamanic journeying, allows us to tap back into that that imagination, but with a sense of trust and allowance that it's real, that these things are actually happening. That because it takes a lot of faith in order to believe that your imagination creates reality, like in all forms.
For sure. Yeah, it's a whole breakdown of limiting beliefs that we've been taught for our whole life.
That's right.
Majority of people.
That's right. And like, so people, they maybe go, even in meditation, they go and they see, they maybe have visions or they go places, and then they come out of it and they say, but what, I don't know how real that was. That was just like during the meditation. But it is very real. But it's very real. And the more that we accept that it's real, and we have more communion, more communication, more interaction with our guides and those on the other side, we understand that it's real. You know?
Yeah.
We have like an understanding that we can do so much from the other side of the veil. And especially with guided shamanic experiences. Because it's like, basically my format is that there's kind of there's an intention, not kind of, there's an intention, and then it's like I build out a world to go to. So then you go into this world and I ask questions. I don't tell you what to think. I maybe set the stage with the world building, but I don't tell you what to believe necessarily. I might use empowering language because that's what I want. That's who I am. Is I'm going to always be empowering. I'm not going to tell you you're a loser while you're in a shamanic journey. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
I'm going to be like, you're the best ever.
Yeah.
Because like, I want you to feel that you're the best ever. I want you to be the best ever.
Right.
Like, and so I take a lot of reverence in doing this work because I am working with people's subconscious minds, and they're giving me great access by doing this. But so it's like I leverage the questions, which is something I learned from Reiki masters. Some of the greatest Reiki masters is how they heal, not with the hands, but with the questions. And they ask the person certain questions to get the person to reflect. Maybe it's just a seed in that moment, and maybe they don't really get the right answer, but then they go home and they meditate and think, hey, what is that? And they start thinking about the questions. And so questions get us to heal ourselves. They get us to, because we're the one, then there's no questioning, there's no pointing the finger, there's no weird energies. It's like, I answered this question, and if I can't answer this question, why can't I answer this question? Like, I have an affirmation service where it's only got 6 questions, and I'm making a personalized affirmation for you. And somebody told me that I had too many questions. And I said, my brother, if you can't answer these 6 questions, you got bigger issues because you don't have any vision for your life. You don't know what you want to become. You don't know where you're headed. And that's a bigger problem than me having 6 questions. Like, come on, my brother. Like, so, forgot where I was going with that a little bit. I did kind of go off. But, importance of shamanism.
Yeah.
And so, we're also accessing these other realms. We're accessing other realms for wisdom, manifestation, or healing. And so within these three intentions, it can open up wide ranges of infinite possibilities. And so part of my vision is to have visionary councils where I get educated or innovative, high level people.
Like a mastermind?
Like mastermind. It definitely like masterminding. Masterminding even corporate executives, entrepreneurs. And we have these intentions of maybe retrieving certain information. Like I've had visions that encouraged me to do this work where it's like I've done a journey where it was a bunch of scientists and researchers, and they were looking for a cure for something. And we opened them up. I have a certain, like a little meditation to open up group consciousness within the circle.
Uh-huh.
And so it's like they create one mind. And so it's like we have all of these researchers, these scientists, these people, all there forming one mind, and then also existing in the spirit realm. And
right.
So it's like, I don't know, like I can just envision it now, like why wouldn't this work for groundbreaking innovation?
It's very powerful.
You know?
Yeah.
Or even world leaders. Like, what if we get some world leaders together and have them all sit there and then go and let them tap in and like talk to their higher selves with each other?
Well, they have to be at a certain level of internal work, because if they haven't, then if let's say they take medicine, then that medicine is going to make them face everything that's in the way of them.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? Like all their trauma has to be addressed. Otherwise, it's going to, a lot of times from my experience, those traumas come up until they're healed in that space. So I think just doing that as the beginning stages of that, you know, right? Like,
yeah, that's the one of the more complex parts of it is doing shamanic journeys for I don't know what to use.
Like people that have already done the work, right?
Well, I mean, I don't want it to be limited to people who have done the work, unfortunately, because it's like great minds aren't necessarily always. They don't always do that. They're not always like, you know, maybe they're focused on their research and they're not like concerned with processing their ego, but they're like the best researcher in the field. Like I would definitely want that guy. I don't know. Yeah, I mean, there definitely is. What do you call it?
Like layers.
Well, there's definitely layers, and I think that by the time that I get to the bigger layers, I'll figure these types of things out. Because most of the journeying that I've done for people have been probably spiritually focused people,
right?
And so it's a little bit different than, as I call them, regular degglers. No disrespect, okay? I'm just saying, like, they're the ones that are just chilling out here in life. Like,
in Harry Potter, they call them muggles.
Muggles, right? Like, I mean, there's different, you know, some people call them NPCs. Like, I think
muggles and NPCs are a little different.
But any terminology I use, whether jokingly or not, there's no disrespect.
Right.
Yeah, I'm not trying to disrespect anybody. It's just an awareness that there's a hierarchy and we're not all at the top. Like but the higher you go, the more you can see that there's more.
Yeah.
That's the thing about higher perspective, like being the human design projector. I see things from a bird's eye view. Some people are just down here and they want to be grounded and they love being grounded. But somebody who's grounded can't see 100 miles away the same way that a bird can. You know, the bird sees it all.
Right.
And I'm not going to apologize for that, knowing that there is hierarchies of awareness. I mean, but there's also the paradox that we're all one and we're all equal. Like, I'm not saying that I'm any better because I have this awareness. it's just, I think that almost everybody who gains a certain level of awareness realizes that there's levels. And there's no disrespect. There's just, I think of it as maturity. Like, as a grandfather, I'm not going to judge my grandchildren who are acting silly because they're children.
Right.
It's like, oh, yeah, that's cute. You went and got the paint and then you dripped it all over here. It's like having kids is like oh, okay, I'm just going to be unconditional, loving, and patient, and know that you'll find a better way eventually.
Right.
And I'm just going to hold space for you, your evolution, and take a deep breath and help you out. And now I'm just going to help you out to guide you the way. And, it's maturity.
Yeah, I try to look at it as like, you're not going to give a college test to a kindergartner, right? So you have to go through different levels of initiation, different levels of spiritual self-work and activations in order to reach those higher levels of frequency and alignment. It's just part of the journey.
Yeah. It's no separation. I try really hard, or not try, but one of my highest intentions is to remain in unity consciousness and to remain in the understanding that there's no separation. And then the love comes from that, right?
Yeah.
And the interconnectedness of everything, that everything's interconnected. And for a long time, most of my life, I've thought in a very collective type way. I'm like a collectivist. I'm not so much an individualist. I like being sovereign, but I like sovereign collectivism. And so it's like, how do you do that? Well, it's balance. It's like living in different spiritual houses, spiritually focused houses. I've learned that it takes a lot of diplomacy to learn how to navigate the dynamics of a community where everyone is part of the basis of the community is sovereignty. And there's virtuous sovereignty, and then there's asshole sovereignty, kind of. You know what I mean? Like, there's people who they're sovereign and they're doing whatever they want, but like
without thinking of others.
Yeah, but they're not thinking of others.
Right.
And they might even get whatever they want, and so they're maybe master manifestors, and maybe people look up to them and their ways of being, and the distortions happen and things like that. But it's like virtuous sovereignty is always the way, I think, is to like see like, how can we make this better? How can we come together with more compassion, more understanding, more acceptance, not tolerance, but acceptance, because we need to have boundaries too, and speaking our truth. And it's a funny thing, because then what happens when there's somebody that doesn't want to follow the rules in a way? How do we have enlightened justice?
Right.
I don't really want to just kick people out.
Right.
But it's an interesting thing.
Have you ever heard of Ubuntu?
Yeah. Right.
I love Ubuntu. Have you read The Law of One?
I have not read The Law of One, but I've listened to a lot of the channelings, especially from Quo.
Okay.
I'm not sure if you're familiar with Quo, but Quo is a combination of Hatuan, Latui, and Ra.
Okay.
Different dimensions, like 4th, 5th, and 6th dimension. They created a collective consciousness called Quo.
Okay. So the reason I ask is because in the Law of One, they mention how Ubuntu is the way of the future of the new earth. Mm-hmm. And for those that don't know, Ubuntu is a way of living that started in Africa, more in the southern region of Africa, where it's a way of living where there's no money, no trade type of community, where it's all a gifting community. Mm-hmm. So let's say you are a chicken farmer in the community. You have like 30 chickens, right? And we have an overabundance of eggs from the chickens. We just don't have it. We have way too much coming in than we have to use, right? So what happens is we take the excess eggs and we just gift them to our neighbors. And let's say they have way more bananas than we do. So they just gift us bananas. But it's not because we gave them the eggs. It's just because they want to give us the bananas. And they're doing that to the other neighbors and the other neighbors. And we're continuing to spread the abundance and the joy of having all those eggs in the community. And it's just a really beautiful way of living where you're also spending 3 hours a week, 3 to 4 hours a week, contributing to a community project. So everybody gets together for 3 hours, and let's say we want to build a road through the community. We're all digging and pulling out roots and rocks and creating this road to the Shala, for example, right? And when everybody contributes those 4 hours to the community projects, then it just allows everything to grow and evolve way more quickly because everybody's part of it, and then it builds bonds and it builds these relationships. And I just love it. I think it's one of the best designs of the way humanity lives and can live. So it's, the TV. The TV just took the logo off, but it's all good. I think they took the remote back. Oh. So we got to enjoy the remote or the logo for a little bit.
But yeah, Ubuntu, it's absolutely. I think those are great points because it really. You mentioned early on about basically generosity, and I was talking to somebody the other day, and their version of generosity was, I give more so I can receive more. And I pointed out to them that that's a slight distortion there because it's not that it's bad to be expecting something, but don't expect something because of the giving.
Right.
Right? True generosity, in my perspective, is to be giving without expectation of return. Just gifting because you want to, not because you expect some type of return on it.
Yeah.
And I think that I see sometimes in the metaphysical community where there's talk where it's very similar, where it's like, I'm going to do this so that I can get this, or I'm going to be a good person. It's like that's religion, right? Like that was an old story of religion. I'm going to be this good person so that I can get to heaven and be afraid of God, and so that then he'll like me. And it's like, I don't know about all that.
I do think, though, that before we come into this body as a soul, there's certain lessons that we're here to continue to learn and to quote unquote pass.
Yeah.
Right?
I think so.
And I think that those lessons are determined by our soul with our team of guides or with our higher self, with Creator, whoever we quote unquote meet with, right? And the reason for that is there's this book. Have you heard of The Journey of Souls?
I think so. I might even have it.
It's really awesome. This hypnotist goes and does 40 studies. I think it's around 40 studies. And basically he says these people have near-death experiences where all 40 of them have died and gone into past the veil into the light or close to the light, on their way to the light. And then they come back to their body. Their soul re-enters their body. They've been clinically dead for X amount of minutes, right? Then they come back into their body. And so he talks to them in hypnosis about what happened to them when they were out of the body, when they were legally dead, right? And so in this book, he talks about how every experience has a similarity to it, where they meet with their guides after they leave the body and they have this recollection of like, okay, did you pass this lesson? Did you do this? Did you reconcile with this person? Did you clear this karma? Did you do this, right? And so to me, that is fascinating to think about, that like we've done this so many times, and who knows how many times we've tried to pass certain lessons or been given these opportunities that we may have failed or not taken advantage of in the moment. And now that we are in this reality, in this experience right now, in this present moment, we're given this gift of re-accessing that and readdressing it, and it's really powerful. And it makes me think about how, people that are dating someone, right? Like they're in a relationship and let's say they were mistreated in their previous relationship, but they didn't do anything. They just jumped into the next relationship right away. Absolutely. There's a very high chance that that person is going to eventually treat them the exact same way, because there is a mirror that happens, and whatever's unhealed inside our soul eventually comes out as a mirror. There could be this honeymoon phase where there's these masks on where people pretend to be a certain way, but eventually all that fades away. And then there's this rawness, right? Like, hey, this is me. And then there's a experience of like, okay, wow, that's actually the same experience I just had with that last relationship. And there's like these serial daters, right? Like that continue to go into these next relationships thinking, oh, it's going to get better, but they're not doing the internal work. And that's where the shift happens, is internally.
Absolutely. I think you're absolutely right. And what's really fun about that is that you're talking about the mirroring of the internal into the external. And then the work has to be done from within. When one can get to a certain level of awareness, they can take a look at collective, global, big scale externals. Not just the externals and the personal, but then they can expand all the way out, and they can say, why is this happening? What part of me wants to express oppression?
Experience oppression?
Express it.
Oh, express it.
Express it. Like what part of me wants to be the oppressor?
Oh, okay.
What part of me is unhealed as the victim that wants to experience the oppressor?
Right.
Like, can I give them both love as the victim and the judge?
Yeah, and it's in those moments, it's like, hey, when did I treat someone like that in the past?
That's a huge reflection point.
Yeah.
Because some people have speculated that I'm somewhat of something called a heoka, which is a Lakota term for a sacred clown. And so sometimes as a sacred clown, we trigger experiences in other people, and we bring out sometimes the worst in them. And the fun part about it is that sometimes then it gets inverted. One of my teachers, many elders, he used to talk about the inversion effect of the heoka, where someone come up and say to him, hey, you're such a, this and that, and blah, 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 and, you did this thing to me, and blah, 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 blah. And it didn't really play out that way. It was actually a projection from the other person. And then he'd sit back and say, okay, thank you for that. Oh. And then he'd observe as somebody would treat that person in the same exact way that they just treated him, or accuse him, or like they would do the same thing that they just accused him of doing. And he'd be like, and then they'd realize it. And then they'd turn to him and say, oh, I'm sorry for earlier. I guess I'd do the same thing. And he'd be like, mm-hmm. Yep, that's inversion. Thank you very much.
That's an interesting term.
Thanks very much for that awareness. Bye. Now you're healed. Go ahead. Now sit with it. Now go sit with it.
Yeah, so that term inversion, basically, from what I'm hearing, it sounds like it's giving them the opposite, or basically the same medicine, right? Like karma coming back at them almost instantly sometimes, right?
Right, because it's like in math and equations, the inversion is like the equation flipped.
Right.
And so that's where the idea kind of comes from, is the idea that it's like there's an equation of energy here, and then the equation gets flipped so that the person can have the experience, and they can then be given the choice of whether or not of what to do, to be humble and recognize that they were a jerk, or if they want to double down on it and be like, hey, that ain't real, like, whatever, you still did that thing to me, and blah, 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 and
to continue the cycle.
Yeah.
Like we were talking about earlier.
And so that's the medicine of the Heyoka is to give people that point of choice sometimes, and say, is this how you want to be?
Right.
Is this really how you want to, Like I had an argument a few weeks ago with somebody, and they were accusing me of some unsavory things, and which were totally unfounded, and it was a projection from them. And I was like, you sure you want to? Okay, I was like, yo, let me just stop you and let me clarify that this is all your own projection, and that this is unwise for you to continue, and like set them straight. And I was like, is this how you still want to continue with this? And they're like, yeah, because you. Okay. Yeah, me. Okay. I was like, you're clearly projecting this from your own hurt perspective, and they're like, yeah, but you. I was like, do you not know what projections are?
Right.
Like, I tell you that it's a projection, and then you go and you point the finger at me. Like,
so sometimes in those experiences, though, there is medicine for the person receiving it as well. So was there any medicine in that experience for you, for example?
The further foundation setting, I guess, because sometimes I would not speak my truth as authoritatively. Sometimes I wouldn't, because I'm a really diplomatic person. And so I don't necessarily like to rock the boat. I don't like to necessarily call people out for their bad behaviors. Plus, as a projector, I'm supposed to wait for the invitation. So I'm not supposed to tell people about who they are. And so that was an example, because they didn't ask me to tell them about who they are. And so that's why they denied it, that's why I think that they denied it was because I didn't receive the invitation, so the information wasn't received.
Right.
And so they defended their bad habits or their bad behavior.
Right. And
so yeah, that was the lesson for me. But also it's like, it's tough for me because I really sometimes get deep insights about people from their choice of words and their choice of tonality.
Right.
And I can't tell them how to fix it, or not fix it, but I can't offer any type of solutions to what they're going through unless they ask me. Or unless I ask them if I can offer, but even then sometimes asking to offer sometimes doesn't even work out.
Right. One of my teachers, this makes me think about one of my teachers. He looks like Gandalf. He's got a white beard down past his belly button, Okay. And I remember he told me this story. He's a man of very few words. And
he told you a story.
But he told me this one story. Yeah. He said that there was there was a woman. This was in the earlier stages of his journey, right? Of his awakening. And this woman came in and he got this super strong download. Like, I got to tell this woman about this book, right? He's like, I got to tell her about this book. But his teacher had told him, just let it sit. Like, just let it be. You don't need to do it every time you get a download.
Oh, yeah.
You don't have to like take those huge steps every time, especially if it's better for that person to figure it out themselves, basically, is what his teacher told him. And so he's like getting these downloads like, oh my God, I got to tell her about this book. I got to tell her now. He like is fighting it. He's like, listen to his teacher. I'm not going to tell him. All right. And then she's walking out of the bookstore, and on the way out, she actually walks out, and then she sees a book in the window, and she goes back in and grabs it and goes and pays for it. And he's like, wow, okay. Like, she still got the hit. She still got the intuition to get the book. He didn't have to do anything, even though Spirit was like, dude, just tell her, you know? And so it was a really powerful like message for me, because when I started my awakening, I wanted to share all this with everyone. I wanted to like here, try this, try that. Like, it was so powerful for me. Like, it's going to be awesome. And then I realized if people aren't coming to me and asking me for this advice, or to hold space for them, or to, hey, what do you think about this? Then I'm not going to go out of my way to be like, hey, I know something that could help you, you know, because they may not be ready to receive that. And so it took a lot of pressure off of me, because I was like, you know, I can just put myself out as my offerings. I can say, hey, I do these different things, and I'm here if you guys need it. And then when you're ready, if you want to come, here's my number, or here's my information. And then that's been so much more easeful for me, because I don't have that pressure of like, you got to make these huge strides to awaken humanity, you know?
Yeah. No, I feel you. Something that really caught me on what you said was, you said, Spirit told. And which Spirit?
Right.
You know, because everything is Spirit. To an extent, everything is Spirit, good and bad. And so you asked about what is the thought, right? And it's like thoughts have spirits.
Right, attached to...
Yeah, and like
the
ego spirit.
Right.
And so it's like, or maybe it was a inner child excitement spirit that told them to say it, right? So it's an interesting thing, because it's that discernment of which spirit is it?
My friend...
is it a benevolent spirit? Because
right.
I hear people say, oh, Spirit told me this, Spirit told me that.
Right.
It's like, sometimes I can feel it where it's like, which spirit?
Right.
You know, like in my intuition it says, well, which spirit? Do you know which spirit? Like in my head I just say this when I hear someone say it sometimes, and I'm saying, I don't know if you even know what spirit is talking to you. If it's the great spirit, or it's the spirit, you know? Like,
yeah, that's what I was in reference to when I said which thought, because, you know, one of my buddies, he shared with me that for him, and I've done a little bit of research on it, it seems to be the case. It may not be for everybody, but it seems as though on the right side of the head is more of the benevolent beings. When you receive a message on the right side, when it's on the left side, it's more of the denser, more malevolent beings.
Interesting.
And I don't know how true that is, but I've been kind of experimenting with that. But there is a level of attunement to one's own body to even be able to tune in, like, where is that coming in, right? Like in men's work, we sometimes ask, like, okay, you have an emotion, tie that emotion to a sensation in your body, right? Like, okay, I'm feeling this tension in my, right under my chest, right? Like in my solar plexus. And okay, what emotion is it that is being felt there? And because the body is all about feeling, right? Like angels, for example, don't have a physical body to feel. Our body is such a transmitter for emotion, and it's really interesting to develop those capabilities to feel, even like, okay. And for me, it's even still challenging to feel, okay, which side of my head am I receiving this thought from? Or, meditation is a great place to practice this.
Yeah, I like that. And you know what it makes me think about is that the right side is the creative side. Left side is more logical, I think, right? I think that's correct. And so the logical side is the denser forms.
Right.
Like
if you think of AI.
Huh?
AI is
AI, what? AI is neutral.
Well, it has no emotion.
But that doesn't. Yeah. So yeah.
It's just straight logic, is what I'm saying.
Yeah. And so it's like, I guess, kind of like what you were saying about how, like, there's the inclination to come in from the left brain, because, like you said, like transmitters, and so it's like sometimes the lower dimensional thought forms have ties to ego and logic and reason.
Right.
Whereas higher dimensional thought forms are usually like
love,
expression, creativity, and, innovation on, like, the right side of the brain. And so it kind of makes sense, because I've never heard of that, but it makes a lot of sense. But what I think is really best is to develop hemisync and then activate the prefrontal cortex.
What's hemisync?
Hemisync is when you can develop the coordination between your left side and your right side, because they're hemispheres, and so it's a hemisync. And so when one can do that, and then you got the two sides, and then you activate, like, the prefrontal cortex as well, then you develop what you call a bird brain. And you can start to learn the language of the birds. As they say in esoteric, there's an esoteric thought, or they call it the green language also, which is the
green?
Green.
Uh-huh.
So it's like heart, but it's also the brain, the bird, because it's like wings in the tail, kind of, right?
Okay.
And so that's what is known as also Christ consciousness. Right, because Christ consciousness is the cross, is the two sides, and then the alignment of the up and down. Right, it's the hemisync and all the chakras. That's the sign of the cross. Right. That's how you become. That's Christ consciousness, is the balance of the two sides of the brain. And so this language of the birds is symbolism, learning to really decode symbolism, sacred geometry, and then word structure, knowing the vibrations of words beyond words, like, because word is not just a sound. Word itself is a concept of creation, right?
Like a vibration.
Yeah, it's like, it's very primal essence. And then words, there's various forms of words, which are, right? But word itself in the most conceptual is creation,
Right.
in my perspective.
Yeah.
And so this language of the birds helps us to also understand and to see how our words are reflecting and how they create the reality that we want or that we're experiencing. And so it's, again, with the bird metaphor, the bird is the bird's eye view. So it's kind of like bird language, bird's eye view, higher perspectives. Oh, okay. I will choose wisely what to say, when to say it, use discernment. Is it for me? Am I speaking for me? Or am I speaking for the other person? You know, 'cause so many people these days, they just talk and talk and talk just to hear their own voice. And it's like, just be quiet.
Right.
Just be quiet.
Right. Well,
Just be quiet. We don't have to just keep talking just because we're in a room together.
Right.
I mean, obviously we're going to right now because we're on the podcast. We will. But yeah, it doesn't have to always apply.
Right. For sure. Yeah, man. Well, I think that's a great place to round it out.
Oh yeah, with the word.
Yeah. Yeah. Just knowing that we always have that opportunity to go inwards and find that stillness, you know?
Yeah, absolutely.
Was there anything else you wanted to add in?
Beautiful services and offerings available. Find me anywhere on all social medias, on YouTube, TikTok, Instagram, SoundCloud, Substack, at I Am King Ododo, on all platforms. I got everything from free to $1,000 offerings, so I got something for everybody. I'm launching my consulting, real estate creative finance. My vision was to diversify my income 10 years ago, and because I got tired of being a chef, and I was like, I started watching entrepreneur stuff here and there, and they're like, diversify your income to be a millionaire. And I started thinking about it. And now I'm like, okay, I'm going to really diversify. And I've spent my life being creative and being innovative. And like the consulting thing, I have really great ideas on the future for humanity, great solutions for the future of humanity.
Yeah, we're gonna drop all your links, anything you want to share. That'll be at the bottom, underneath in the captions. So, thank you so much
thank you for allowing me. I guess I would say I got something written here in a little bit. Just your energy is your reality. Master the frequency, and you master the outcome. Sovereignty begins within. When you own your energy, you own your reality. You are the architect of your destiny. What you commit to daily determines who you become. Master your energy, refine your vision, and pursue excellence in all things. The world needs your highest self. The future belongs to those who can dream together and act as one. Thank you very much, Peter.
Beautiful.
Thank you, Spiritual Teacher Podcast. Thank you for tuning in. Thank you to the viewers for coming, the listeners that have stuck through, you know.
Yeah, man. Thank you so much for coming on, brother. It was an honor, man. Woo. Until next time, brother. Big love.